Did you know that the Russian Civil War was more devastating to Russia than World War I? While the Great War cost Russia around 3 million lives. The civil war that followed resulted in an estimated 7 to 10 million deaths, mostly civilians. It was a brutal, multi-sided conflict that tore the former Russian Empire apart and reshaped the 20th century. So, how did this catastrophic war begin? Who were the key players? And what was its lasting impact on the world? Let's dive in. The fuse was lit in 1917. Russia, already reeling from the enormous losses of World War I, was in chaos. In February, the Tsar was overthrown and a provisional government took over. But this government was weak and failed to solve the country's deep-seated problems: food shortages, war fatigue, and land disputes. This created a power vacuum, and Vladimir Lenin's Bolshevik Party, with their simple, powerful slogans of peace, land, and bread, saw their chance. In October 1917, they seized power in a swift coup, establishing the world's first communist state. But their hold on power was anything but secure. The Bolsheviks, soon to be known as the Reds, controlled only a small part of Russia, mainly the industrial heartland around Petrograd and Moscow. Opposition sprang up everywhere, creating a complex web of enemies. This wasn't just a two-sided fight. It was a chaotic freefall. First, you had the White Movement. This was a loose alliance of different groups united by one thing: their hatred of the Bolsheviks. It included monarchists who wanted to restore the Tsar, liberals who wanted a republic, and military generals who just wanted order. Leaders like Admiral Kolchak in Siberia, General Denikin in the south, and General Yudenich in the northwest commanded large but uncoordinated armies. They were the main anti-Bolshevik force. Then there were the anti-Bolshevik leftists. These were other socialist groups, like the Socialist Revolutionaries and Mensheviks, who had initially supported the revolution, but were horrified by the Bolsheviks' one-party dictatorship. They tried to establish their own democratic governments, but were often crushed between the Reds and the Whites. As if that wasn't complicated enough, foreign powers got involved. The Allied intervention saw countries like Britain, France, Japan, and the United States send troops into Russia. Their initial goal was to reopen the Eastern Front against Germany in World War I. But after the war ended, their mission shifted to supporting the Whites and containing the spread of communism. Their involvement, however, was half-hearted and ultimately backfired, allowing the Bolsheviks to paint themselves as defenders of Russia against foreign invaders. And finally, you had various separatist movements. With the central authority of the Russian Empire gone, numerous ethnic groups saw an opportunity to declare independence. Finns, Poles, Ukrainians, and peoples in the Caucasus and Central Asia all fought for their own nations. Some, like the anarchist Black Army, led by Nestor Makhno in Ukraine, fought against everyone: the Reds, the Whites, leading the Germans to create their own stateless society. So, how did the Reds, surrounded on all sides, manage to win? It came down to a few key factors. First, geography. The Bolsheviks controlled the industrial and population centers of Russia, giving them access to factories, railways, and a larger pool of recruits. Their territory was compact and connected, while the White armies were scattered around the vast periphery of Russia, unable to coordinate their attacks effectively. Second, leadership and unity. While the Whites were a fractured coalition with competing goals, the Reds had a single, ruthless leadership under Lenin and a brilliant military organizer in Leon Trotsky. Trotsky transformed the disorganized Red Guards into the disciplined and formidable Red Army. They had a clear, unified ideology: communism, that, while brutal, inspired fanatical devotion among their followers. The Whites, by contrast, couldn't agree on what they were fighting for, other than being anti-Bolshevik. Third, propaganda and popular support. The Bolsheviks were masters of propaganda. Their promise of land to the peasants was incredibly popular. Even though they later seized grain by force, many peasants initially feared a White victory more, believing it would mean the return of the old landlords. The Whites, on the other hand, failed to offer a compelling vision for the future and often alienated the local populations in the areas they controlled. If you're finding this history as fascinating as I do, a great book to get a deeper understanding of the individuals who shaped these events is A People's Tragedy by Orlando Figes. It's a comprehensive and gripping account of the entire revolutionary period. I'll drop a link in the description below if you want to check it out. It really brings the stories of ordinary people and major leaders to life. The war itself was incredibly brutal. Both sides used terror as a weapon. The Bolsheviks established the Cheka, their secret police, which carried out the Red Terror, executing tens of thousands of perceived enemies of the state. The Whites responded with their own White Terror, carrying out massacres and pogroms, particularly against Jewish communities, whom they falsely blamed for the revolution. Civilians were caught in the middle, suffering from famine, disease, and the constant violence. The policy of war communism, where the Bolsheviks seized all grain from peasants to feed the army and cities, led to a catastrophic famine in 1921 that killed millions. This was the main reason the death toll was so astronomically high. By 1920, the major white armies had been defeated. Denikin's forces in the south were pushed back to the Crimean Peninsula and eventually evacuated. Kolchak was captured and executed in Siberia. Yudenik's push on Petrograd failed. The foreign powers, weary of war and facing opposition at home, withdrew their troops. The Bolsheviks then moved to crush the remaining separatist and peasant uprisings. By 1922, they had reconquered most of the former Russian Empire, including Ukraine and the Caucasus. In December of that year, they officially established the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR. The end of the Russian Civil War wasn't just the end of a conflict. It was the birth of a new world power and a new global ideology. The victory of the Bolsheviks confirmed the survival of the first communist state. This had a profound impact on global politics for the next 70 years. The USSR saw itself as the leader of a worldwide revolution, inspiring communist movements and parties across the globe. For those interested in the military tactics and the lived experience of the soldiers, Antony Beevor's book, Russia, Revolution, and Civil War, 1917 to 1921, is another must-read. Beever is a master of military history, and he details the campaigns and the human cost of the fighting with incredible clarity. Again, you can find a link to it in the description. It's a fantastic companion piece to understanding the strategic side of the war. In response to the rise of the USSR, Western nations became deeply fearful of communism, leading to the Red Scare in the United States and a general policy of containment that would eventually evolve into the Cold War. The world was now divided into two ideological camps, communist and capitalist. This division would define international relations, fuel proxy wars, and drive the nuclear arms race for much of the 20th century. Internally, the Civil War forged the Soviet state. It was born from violence and centralized control. The methods used to win the war: one-party rule, a secret police, state control of the economy, and the suppression of all dissent became permanent features of the Soviet system. The democratic and pluralistic hopes of early 1917 were completely extinguished. The brutal legacy of the war paved the way for the totalitarian rule of Joseph Stalin, who would take the terror and state control established during the Civil War to even more extreme and horrifying levels. So, the Russian Civil War was not just a footnote in history. It was a crucible of fire that destroyed an empire and created a superpower. It claimed millions of lives, redrew the map of Eastern Europe, and set the stage for the great ideological struggle of the 20th century, the Cold War. Its echoes can still be felt today in the political landscape of Russia and its neighboring countries. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel History Pickle and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history. See you next time.